So good morning once again, students of class 12, and we continue once again with our short story The Sound Machine by Roald Dahl. And today we are going to do the last or the ultimate part of the story as promised by me in my previous video, and I expect all of you to follow the text. Please take out your textbooks and also follow the text which comes up on your screen now. So we begin from where we had left off in our previous video. We have seen two episodes. First, the doctor who comes and Klausner explains how his sound machine is supposed to be supposed to detect sounds which are ultrasonic, and then we saw him listening to the sounds of roses being cut by Mrs. Saunders. And now the next morning, let's see what he is up to. So let's begin from the last line on your screen. The next morning, Klausner was up as soon as it was light. He dressed and went straight to the shed. He picked up the machine and carried it outside, clasping it to his chest with both hands, walking unsteadily under its weight because it was a heavy device, and secondly because he had made it. He was the creator or the maker of this machine, so he was very protective about this machine lest it should fall from his hands and lest it should be damaged. So he's carrying it with utmost love and care. He went past the house, out through the front gate and across the road to the park. There he paused and looked around him. Then he went on until he came to a large tree. So where does he go this time? He goes to a park which is right across the street, on the other side of the street in fact, and here in this park there are lot many trees and plants, and Klausner wants to make yet another experiment, this time do yet another experiment and see if he can hear any new sound. So he goes across the road to the park. There he paused and looked around him, and then he went on until he came to a large tree. Now he comes near a tree, and what kind of tree is it? It is a beech tree. And he placed the machine on the ground close to the trunk of the tree. Quickly he went back to the house and got an axe from the coal cellar. What is a coal cellar? It's a godown where coal is kept. Now this story dates back to the times when electric heating and central AC and things like that were not available, and so in cold countries, especially in winter, they had to keep the fireplace burning, and that provided warmth, and for that coal was necessary, and gas stoves were also not possible in those times. That's why coal was necessary for the purpose of cooking. So there was a regular room or a godown or a small shed, you could say, where the coal was kept, and some of the gardening tools were also kept there. So there was an axe kept in the coal shed, and he brought the axe out of that cellar and again came back to the park. Now his machine is placed somewhere near the beech tree, and he has got an axe. Now let's see what he is trying to do. So he carried it across the road into the park. He put the axe on the ground beside the tree. Then he looked around him again, peering nervously through his thick glasses in every direction. There was no one about. It was 6 in the morning. Now it is quite early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. So you could say the neighborhood was still asleep, and the road was empty. There was nobody around. And so what does he do? Let's see. He put the earphones on his head and switched on the machine. He listened for a moment to the faint, familiar humming sound. Once again, he puts on the headphones or the earphones and he starts tuning into his machine. Then he picked up the axe, took a stance, means took a pose, so that he can swing the axe and hit the trunk of the tree with the blade of the axe. So he took a stance with his legs wide apart so that he has a firm hold on the ground as he stands and holds the axe in his arms, in his hands. So he swung the axe as hard as he could at the base of the tree trunk. And what happened? The blade cut deep into the wood and stuck there. And at the instant of impact, just at the very moment when this blade of the axe hit the trunk of the tree, what did he hear? He heard a most extraordinary noise in the earphones. It was a new noise, unlike any he had heard before. A harsh, noteless, enormous noise, a growling, low-pitched, screaming sound. Not quick and short like the noise of the roses, but drawn out like a sob, lasting for fully a minute, loudest at the moment when the axe struck, fading gradually, fainter and fainter until it was gone. So the noise had to be different. Earlier he was listening to the noise being made by flowers as they were being cut, whether the roses or the daisies when he tried to pluck them one by one. Those were smaller varieties of plants, but this was a huge tree which had a trunk, and so the sound obviously has to be different, heavier, long drawn, almost like a growling, and then also sad because it's like sobbing, but it's long drawn, and that's what he hears through his earphones. So Klausner stared in horror at the place where the blade of the axe had sunk into the wood flesh of the tree. What is wood flesh? The flesh, just as we have flesh on our bodies, similarly, trees have wood. They are made of wood. So that is the wood flesh, the body of the tree in simpler terms. So at the exact point where the axe had cut through the wood or the wooden body of the tree, he looked at it. He was staring at it in horror. Then gently he took the axe handle, worked the blade loose. That means he moved it up and down, moved the handle of the axe up and down till the blade of the axe was freed from the trunk of the tree. So he removed the axe. It was stuck in the wood, in the wooden trunk. He removed it by shifting it to and fro. So he threw the thing to the ground. What does this imply? Why do you think he threw the axe to the ground? Simple. He was so aghast, he was so shocked that he developed a detest or a dislike or a loathing for this axe, which had caused so much of pain to the tree. So he removed it and threw it down on the ground. With his fingers, he touched the gash that the axe had made in the wood, touching the edges of the gash, trying to press them together to close the wound. So, he was so upset to see what damage he had done to the body of the tree, and now he was touching the exact spot where the axe had cut through the wood, and he was trying to press it close. Only if it could be pressed close. It couldn't possibly be pressed close because it was already damaged. It was already injured. The wood was injured. The tree was injured. So, this is what he is trying to do. And he kept saying, "Tree, oh tree, I am sorry, but it will heal. It will heal fine." So he's telling the tree that he's sorry. He's telling the tree that the wound or the injury that he has caused to the tree will be healed after some time, and that the tree will be all right once again. He's expressing his regret to a tree as one would express one's regret to another human being if by mistake he happens to hurt that human being. So here, Klausner is upset because he has injured the tree. For a while he stood there with his hands upon the trunk of the great tree. Then suddenly he turned away and hurried off out of the park. Across the road, through the front gate and back into his house, he went to the telephone, consulted the book. What book? The telephone directory. Looking for a number. Whose number? Obviously Dr. Scott's number. Because anything happens, he calls Dr. Scott. So he consulted the book, dialed a number and waited. He held the receiver tightly in his left hand and tapped the table impatiently with his right. He was impatient, so he was tapping the table with his finger. He heard the telephone buzzing at the other end, and then the click of a lifted receiver and a man's voice, a sleepy voice saying, "Hello? Yes." "Dr. Scott?" he said. "Yes, speaking." "Dr. Scott, you must come at once. Quickly, please." "Who is it speaking?" "Klausner here. And you remember what I told you last night about my experience with sound? And how I hoped I might..." Yes, of course. But what's the matter? Are you ill?" "No, I'm not ill." "But it's 6:30 in the morning," the doctor said. "And you call me, but you are not ill. Please come quickly. I want someone to hear it. It's driving me mad. I can't believe it." The doctor heard the frantic, almost hysterical note in the man's voice. Whose voice? Klausner's voice. The same note he was used to hearing in the voices of people who called up and said, "There has been an accident, come quickly." So the tone of the voice was similar. The urgency in the voice was similar. He said slowly, "You really want me to get out of bed and come over now?" "Yes, now. At once, please." "All right then, I'll come." So Dr. Scott agrees to come. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, remember? Maybe a little after 6. Klausner sat down beside the telephone and waited. He tried to remember what the shriek of the tree had sounded like. He was trying to guess at the shriek of the kind of shriek that the tree had given. But he couldn't. He could remember only that it had been enormous and frightful, and that it had made him feel sick with horror. He felt so upset on hearing that sound, which the tree had probably made. He was upset because he had inflicted the injury, and so he felt guilty. He tried to imagine what sort of a noise a human would make if he had to stand anchored to the ground while someone deliberately swung a small sharp thing at his leg so that the blade cut in deep and wedged itself in the cut. He's trying to put a human being in place of the tree, and he's trying to imagine how it would have been had it been a human being suffering such an injury with an axe. It was really something terrible which Klausner could not possibly tolerate. Same sort of noise, perhaps? No. Quite different. The noise of the tree was worse than any known human noise because of that frightening, toneless, throatless quality. He began to wonder about other living things, and he thought immediately of a field of wheat standing up straight and yellow and alive, with the mower going through it. imagining that there is this field full of wheat, ripe wheat, which is golden in color. And then this mower. What is a mower? A machine which cuts the wheat. Perhaps a kind of harvester. If the machine starts cutting the stalks of the wheat in the wheat field, what kind of terrible sound is actually produced by the wheat plants, which we human beings are not able to hear. But by means of this machine which he had made, one could possibly hear the screams of those wheat plants. He's imagining that. He's imagining and he's feeling sick. So, he began to wonder, what would it be like? The mower going through it, cutting the stems, 500 stems a second, every second. Oh my God, what would that noise be like? 500 wheat plants screaming together, and every second another 500 being cut and screaming. No, he thought, I do not want to go to a wheat field with my machine, especially not during the harvest season. No way, I cannot tolerate the sound. I would never eat bread after that, because bread is made out of wheat. Wheat is grown, then it is cut and harvested, and then the wheat grains are converted into wheat flour, and then you have bread. So he says to himself that if I take my machine and if I happen to listen to the harvester harvesting wheat, I will not be able to eat bread thereafter. But what about potatoes and cabbages and carrots and onions? And what about apples? No, apples are all right. They fall off naturally when they are ripe. Apples are all right if you let them fall off instead of tearing them from the tree branch. But not vegetables. Not a potato, for example. A potato would surely shriek. And so would a carrot and an onion and a cabbage. He heard the click of the front gate latch. And he jumped up and went out and saw the tall doctor coming down the path. Little black bag in hand, that's the doctor's bag, in which he keeps his stethoscope, his thermometer, and other things necessary for treatment. Well, the doctor said, well, what's all the trouble? Come with me, doctor, I want you to hear it. I called you because you're the only one I have told. It's over the road in the park. Will you come now? The doctor looked at him. He seemed calmer now. There was no sign of madness or hysteria. Now, because he's a medical professional, the doctor thinks from the point of view of medical science, and he tries to assess the man standing before him, talking with so much of excitement. He's trying to assess whether this man has gone into hysteria or some kind of temporary madness. But no, the expert's eyes tell the expert that he's not mad. He's all right. He's just excited for some reason. He was merely disturbed and excited. That's what the doctor inferred or understood. They went across the road into the park, and Klausner led the way to the great beech tree at the foot of which stood the long black coffin box of the machine and the axe. Why did you bring it out here? The doctor asked. I wanted a tree. There aren't any big trees in the garden. And why the axe? You will see in a moment. But now, please put on these earphones and listen. Listen carefully and tell me afterwards precisely or exactly what you hear. I want to make quite sure. The doctor smiled and took the earphones and put them over his ears. Klausner bent down and flicked the switch on the panel of the machine. Then he picked up the axe and took his stance with his legs apart, ready to swing. For a moment he paused. "Can you hear anything?" he said to the doctor. "Can I what?" "Can you hear anything?" "Just a humming noise." Klausner stood there with the axe in his hands, trying to bring himself to swing. But the thought of the noise that the tree would make made him pause again. "What are you waiting for?" the doctor asked. "Nothing," Klausner answered, and then lifted the axe and swung it at the tree. And as he swung, he thought, he felt, he could swear he felt a movement of the ground on which he stood. He felt a slight shifting of the earth beneath his feet, as though the roots of the tree were moving underneath the soil. But it was too late to check the blow, and the axe blade struck the tree and wedged deep into the wood. So, once again, just as he had done before, he does it, and he felt a vibration before he hit the tree under his feet, as if the roots of the tree under the earth or inside the soil were trying to shrink in fear, because he was hitting the tree once again with the axe. At that moment, high overhead, there was the cracking sound of wood splintering and the swishing sound of leaves brushing against other leaves, and they both looked up, and the doctor cried, "Watch out! Run, man! Quickly, run!" The doctor had ripped off the earphones and was running away fast. But Klausner stood spellbound, staring up at the great branch, 60 feet long at least, that was bending slowly downward. What was happening? When he hit the tree the second time with his axe, somehow one of the top branches of the tree, a huge one that too, much bigger than the other branches, broke off and was coming down to fall upon the ground, right where the machine was, right where Klausner was, and right where the doctor was. This huge branch was suddenly cracking from the topmost part of the tree and was coming crashing down towards them. And so the doctor warned him to leave everything and run. And the doctor himself had taken off the earphones and was on the process of running away. So, it was bending slowly downward, breaking and crackling and splintering at its thickest point where it joined the main trunk of the tree. The branch came crashing down, and Klausner leapt aside just in time. It fell upon the machine and smashed it into pieces. The machine has been destroyed. As if it is Nemesis, as if it is the tree taking revenge on Klausner. "Great heavens!" shouted the doctor as he came running back. "That was a near one. I thought it had got you." What did the doctor mean? He exclaimed, and he came back running. He had run away, leaving the earphones, taking off the earphones and throwing them down. He had run while giving a warning, verbal warning to Klausner, and the branch came crashing down, destroyed the machine, and Klausner at the last moment could jump aside and avoid the branch, and that's how he was saved. Lucky for him. And the doctor comes running back and says, "I thought the branch almost got you." Klausner was staring at the tree. His large head was leaning to one side, and upon his smooth white face there was a tense, horrified expression. Slowly he walked up to the tree and gently he prized the blade loose from the trunk. Prized, gradually lifted with force and removed the axe from where it was stuck in the body of the tree or the tree trunk. "Did you hear it?" he said, turning to the doctor. His voice was barely audible. The doctor was still out of breath from running and the excitement. "Hear what?" "In the earphones. Did you hear anything when the axe struck?" The doctor began to rub the back of his neck. "Well," he said, "as a matter of fact," he paused and frowned and bit his lower lip. "No, I'm not sure. I couldn't be sure. I don't suppose I had the earphones on for more than a second after the axe struck." Yes, but what did you hear?" "I don't know," the doctor said. "I don't know what I heard. Probably the noise of the branch breaking." He was speaking rapidly, rather irritably. "What did it sound like?" Klausner leaned forward slightly, staring hard at the doctor. "Exactly what did it sound like?" "Oh, hell," the doctor said. "I really don't know. I was more interested in getting out of the way. Let's leave it." "Dr. Scott, what did it sound like?" "For God's sake, how could I tell? What with half the tree falling on me and having to run for my life?" The doctor certainly seemed nervous. You see how desperate Klausner has become? He wants, he is demanding, he is forcing the doctor to speak up, to say something which he wants to hear, something which is similar to what he had experienced before he rang the doctor and brought him to the park. So, the doctor certainly seemed nervous. Klausner had sensed it now. He stood quite still, staring at the doctor, and for fully half a minute he didn't speak. The doctor moved his feet, shrugged his shoulders, and half turned to go. "Well," he said, "we'd better get back. Let's go back." "Look," said the little man, and now his smooth white face became suddenly suffused with color. "Look," he said, "you stitch this up." He pointed to the last gash that the axe had made in the tree trunk. "You stitch this up quickly." "Don't be silly," the doctor said. "You do as I say. Stitch it up." Klausner was gripping the axe handle and he spoke softly, in a curious, almost a threatening tone. "Don't be silly," the doctor said. "I can't stitch through wood. Come on, let's get back." "So you can't stitch through wood?" "No, of course not. Have you got any iodine in your bag?" "What if I have?" "Then paint the cut with iodine." That means dab some iodine solution onto the cut which I have made with the axe on the tree. It will sting, but that can't be helped. Now, iodine stings when you have a cut because you are a human being, but for a tree to experience a sting and to cure a cut made on the body of the tree with iodine, who has ever heard of anything like this before? Even the doctor, in all his years of medical practice, has probably never faced a situation like this. "Now look," the doctor said, and again he turned as if to go. "Let's not be ridiculous. Let's get back to the house and then paint the cut with iodine." He's threatening. Klausner is threatening. The doctor hesitated. He saw Klausner's hands tightening on the handle of the axe. He decided that his only alternative was to run away fast, and he certainly wasn't going to do that. All right, he said, I'll paint it with iodine. He got his black bag, which was lying on the grass about 10 yards away, opened it, and took out a bottle of iodine and some cotton wool. He went up to the tree trunk, uncorked the bottle, tipped some of the iodine onto the cotton wool, bent down and began to dab it into the cut. He kept one eye on Klausner. Why? Because he did not want to be attacked by this madman who was holding the axe in his hand. So, watching him. Make sure you get it right in. Who is saying this? Klausner. Yes, the doctor said. Now do the other one, the one just above it. Which is the other one? The first cut which Klausner had made before he called the doctor. He's asking him to put iodine into that cut as well. The doctor did as he was told. There you are, he said. It's done. He straightened up and surveyed his work in a very serious manner. That should do nicely. Klausner came closer and gravely, means with a serious expression on his face, examined the two wounds. Yes, he said, nodding his huge head slowly up and down. Yes, that will do nicely. He stepped back a pace. That is one step. You will come and look at them again tomorrow? Since you are a doctor and since the tree is your patient, I hope you will come down here again tomorrow and have a look at the tree to see how far it has healed. Won't you? Of course. Oh yes, said the doctor, and put some more iodine on. Yes, I will come down and I'll also put some more iodine onto the two injuries. If necessary, yes. So this makes Klausner happy. Thank you, doctor, Klausner said. And he nodded his head again and he dropped the axe, and all at once he smiled, a wild, excited smile, and quickly the doctor went over to him and gently he took him by the arm and he said, come on, we must go now. And suddenly they were walking away, the two of them walking silently, rather hurriedly, across the park, over the road, back to the house. Why do you think the doctor came forward, took him by the arm and took him away from the park and back to his house? The simple reason is that now the doctor is sure that his patient has overcome the terrible excitement or the anger or the rage that was fuming inside him. And now it is time, because he is a doctor, to take the patient home where he can take rest and where he can recover from this pressure which is in his mind. So the doctor complies with whatever he wants so that his patient should be all right and so that his patient should be cured of this madness. So with that, we come to the end of this short story. I hope you have understood. Wasn't it interesting? I'm sure it was. Thank you very much.